You're listening to today's inspirational message on the Proverbs with Bjorklund.
Proverbs is full of better statements and statements about money. And it's significant how many times Proverbs addresses money because money is a big deal in life. And anybody who tries to act like money doesn't matter or it's not a big deal probably hasn't had to be responsible for money, hasn't had to try to live without much, hasn't had to try to manage a whole lot. And when we come to Proverbs 22, it starts with this phrase, and then there's several places where money is addressed. It says, "A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, and favor is better than silver or gold." So the simple first statement is that money is not as good for you as having the good name, the good reputation. But I don't know about you, but that doesn't strike me as necessarily always being true. In fact, in the New Testament, we're told not to worry about what people say about us, but only what God says or only what God thinks, not to seek the approval of human beings. And so there's a nuance here, but I think what's being said is that sometimes there will be a choice between doing what is good and right and having a reputation that's right versus income. But most of us would say, I would rather have millions of dollars and choices than a good name. But Proverbs exhorts us to think differently about this. It also exhorts us to think differently about debt. Verse 7, the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is the slave of the lender. The slave language here is important, and it is really pointing to this idea that debt obligates you to work. It obligates you to people. It obligates you to future unknown time that you will have to be paying. And so debt, although not forbidden in Scripture, certainly is unwise for depreciating items and is certainly, even for appreciating items, still something that creates an obligation. And so Proverbs says, choose a good name over wealth, choose to get out of debt when you can. And then we see this where we read this and it says, verse 8, whoever sows injustice will reap calamity, and the rod of his fury will fail. And then a little later, we read about just this idea of being just. Verse 16, whoever oppresses the poor to increase his own wealth or gives to the rich will only come to poverty. So Proverbs doesn't just exhort us to deal with debt and to choose a good name, but to choose justice in the way that we approach our lives. And then I would add that it encourages us to be generous. Verse 9, whoever has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. And bountiful is a word that can mean generous here. And so there's an idea of being generous with what we do, and justice comes back in verses 22 and 23. Do not rob the poor or crush the afflicted at the gate. The Lord will plead their cause and rob of life those who rob them. These verses are just simply pointing us to this multifaceted approach to wealth. And I would just summarize it in these two phrases. Don't overvalue money and assume that it means everything. Your character, justice, generosity matter more than what you have. But also don't undervalue wealth, because wealth allows us to be free from obligation, being out of debt. It allows us to give to the poor. It allows us to impact justice. And so when it comes to money, we want to understand its power, both for good and for ill in our lives, and make choices that are according to what is wise. And that is what Proverbs 22 encourages us as we read it.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.